Hello there, and thank you for selecting this video. This is the last video in a series I've been doing exploring the works and principles of the great 20th century master, Dr. Napoleon Hill. And I want to thank you for watching this video. It shows a strong interest in your dedication to understanding success, and that is commendable by itself. As the Bible says, ask and it shall be given to you, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. And today we are going to open the door and certainly talk about a rather interesting principle. By the way, if you have not watched my other videos, please take a look at some of the other ones for a better introduction to Napoleon Hill. This was a very interesting person, and he's got a lot to share with the world still. Also, please like and subscribe down below if you can. It helps me know that you receive something of value from these videos, and definitely helps, let me know if the content is relevant. Also, please share your comments, thoughts, and recommendations also below. And if there's a concept that I can clarify, please let me know as well. Always looking to further to the discussion. So I wanted to start off with a couple of quotes talking about habits, because that's going to be a big part of the discussion today. And I think that this you will get quite a bit out of this, because habits are a critical part in just everything that we do. And it's worth taking some time to talk about them. Good quote here, by the way, from Jack Canfield, author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. Your habits will determine your future. Another great quote by Jim Rohn, motivational speaker, did some great work, always worth taking a look at. Jim Rohn said, motivation is what gets you started, and habit is what keeps you going. And last quote here by James Clear, quite literally, you become your habits. Quotes on habits by Napoleon Hill, who we're talking about today. From Hill, it takes a habit to replace a habit. Another one here, both success and failure are largely the results of habit. And the last one, mind control is largely the result of self-discipline and habit. You either control your mind or it controls you. Some profound words there. Today's discussion is looking at Napoleon Hill's theory of what he dubbed cosmic habit force. And my take is that cosmic habit force is one of the most interesting of Hill's 17 main principles. The theory of cosmic habit force has some metaphysical attributes, so it can be a little difficult to wrap your head around, but I'm going to try and break it down as much as I can. I listened to a few lectures that he did. I also read the book Outwitting the Devil, which was a book that Napoleon Hill wrote in 1938. And it was not published for many, many years. It was considered too controversial at the time by family and friends, but now I would highly recommend it. It's got a wealth of information in it that's certainly worth reading. So go and find it if you really want to get a grasp on this stuff. Now, when I say metaphysical, the definition of that by Webster's is a division of philosophy that is concerned with the fundamental nature of reality and being. And I think that cosmic habit force seems to fit pretty well in there, but there's definitely something of value here. So let's not keep waiting. Let's go right into it. So the concept of cosmic habit force is a important tool that we can use on our journey to success. Cosmic habit force will give you the means through which your aims and desires can be put into action almost automatically through habits. Now, a basic definition I was able to get for it is that cosmic habit force is a law that gives definiteness of action to everything that moves in the whole universe. That's a big one to digest. But every living thing and piece of matter in the universe, according to Hill, follows this main principle. And all actions and reactions are defined by cosmic habit force. He gives some specific examples of this. The stars in the heavens, if you think about it, the stars and the planets, they all move with an orderliness and a rhythm. They don't bounce around into each other or move chaotically. Now, I'm sure there might be some experts out there who might question that part, but if we think about it as a main principle, all of the 9 planets and the moon and all of their moons and all those pieces, they do have an order and they do have a rhythm that they operate in. And if we look at the molecular level, there's a rhythm to that too. And it kind of replicates, in a way, what we see on the macro level with planets and such. Another part of cosmic habit force are the seasons of the year. They come winter, followed by spring, followed by summer, followed by fall, and so on and so forth. And it always operates in the same way. They always come, fairly consistent. We always know that stuff is coming around the corner. If we look at nature, squirrels have born an instinct to carry out their lives a certain way. And if we look at Scooby the dog over here, who's taking a nap, he has a natural orderliness that he follows as well. And right now he's decided to sleep with that. The perpetuation of species, if we think about it, acorns always beget trees, which then beget acorns, and so on and so forth. It doesn't wake up one day where an acorn will suddenly develop a rock. It's the same plan, and it keeps going, and there's a rhythm to that. So all of these things are defined by cosmic habit force, and we are too. My take on it is that cosmic habit force is sort of a physical, metaphysical analog to Newton's first law, which states that an object at rest remains at rest, and an object in motion remains in motion at a constant speed in a straight line unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. We're going to get into an example of what that kind of unbalanced force might be. Now, when it comes to man applying cosmic habit force, we can use this law, this sort of orderliness of things, to establish our own patterns and therefore man's own destiny. So cosmic habit force is a tool that we can use to determine our own future. We can create our own habits through thought, be they positive or negative. The mind is the starting place for putting cosmic habit force into action. Repetition is sort of the key in that, to ingrain those thoughts within us. When we ingrain a definite major purpose, usually by reciting it or really making it a part of who we are in our being, when we ingrain that in us, cosmic habit force, so to speak, takes over our mental attitude and puts us on a path to success through new habits. Does that kind of make sense, what I'm talking about? So just as the planets and the nature has that orderliness, when we start putting in these habits and these pieces, it puts us on a similar trajectory. So we have, if we take Newton's first law as an example, this is the force that's being acted upon to put us in that direction. By default, cosmic habit force takes over our dominating focus unless that is broken through the will of the individual. So an example of this would be a positive mental attitude can create a health consciousness, which is carried out by cosmic habit force. Positive mental attitude, taking those sorts of attributes, that's going to make us want to treat ourselves better and to put ourselves on a better trajectory. Now, the adverse here is also true. A negative mental attitude will carry out an unhealthy consciousness. So overeating, smoking, doing things to our body that we're not supposed to, and other negative habits. And just to put a definition in here, consciousness, when we talk about that, that is a continuous awareness of a condition. My take here is that habits, they tend to be very easy to form and somewhat difficult to break. And this is where routine becomes very, very important. Thinking about the routine, I mean, how are we starting the day? Are we approaching the day with dread? Are we looking forward to it? What's our attitude going into a situation? Do we have, if we start putting in good habits at the beginning of the day, that's going to set us up for success in the long term. Now, the negative application of cosmic habit force is what we would call hypnotic rhythm. The way that Hill talks about it is that hypnotic rhythm takes over when we neglect to fix our thoughts on what we actually desire. So I think that we talked a little bit about this in some of the previous videos. We become what we think about. And in this case, that's picked up by hypnotic rhythm, the negative application of cosmic habit force, and puts us on that trajectory. It says here, cosmic habit force just as easily attracts the negative of what we think about. It is critical that we fix our thoughts on exactly what we desire until the pattern is permanent and taken over through cosmic habit force. Fixations can have real power over us. Failing to use cosmic habit force correctly can be detrimental to one's success in life. So this is really a choice for us to implement this process or to fail to do so. My take here, like I said before, definitely read Outwitting the Devil for a bit of a in-depth explanation of hypnotic rhythm. It's very easy just to get caught up in living. Maybe, have you ever felt, I know that Tony Robbins talks about this, but the idea things just got in the way and it picked up in habit, which led to this and led to that. And the truth is, we don't have time to get caught up with those things. We have to break negative habits and refuse to let them ingrain themselves in us and sabotage our success. Does that make sense? What we're talking about here is breaking a sort of natural pattern which can happen if we're not paying. It's like if we're driving a car and we're not paying attention to exactly where that car is going to go, it's going to take us somewhere we don't want. In the same way, if I talked about this before in another set that we did. If you go onto a ship and you go to the captain's bridge and you talk with him and you say, where's the ship going? He's going to tell you, we're going to go here, we're going to go there, we're going to get there at this time, and that's the plan. They have a plan for where that giant ship is headed. It's not they just, they don't just put that out in the sea and then we're going to see where it goes. They don't do that. And while they're on the ship, if we want to make that analogy, take it a little bit further, as far as habits, everyone has certain duties, certain habits which they do on that ship to make sure everything works, and that helps get everything to where it needs to go. All right, now we're going to talk about how cosmic habit force operates. Cosmic habit force fixes the habits of the, and this is using Hill's explanation, fixes the habits of the electrons and protons of matter. Everything in the universe moves in an immutable pattern, except for man, who can break from cosmic habit force and create his own patterns. And he can do that because he controls his own mind. Cosmic habit force fixes the patterns of all living things so that each reproduces after its own patterns, like we talked about before. If we look at oats, they always make oats. They don't change from that. Likewise, atoms combine together. If we take the same thing, if we take hydrogen and if we take one atom of hydrogen, one and two atoms of oxygen, and we put them together, it always produces water. It always produces the same thing, more or less. When the human mind is focused on a definite major purpose, the law of cosmic habit force likewise attracts the material equivalent. So dwelling on negative things will just as surely attract their physical equivalent, whether that's poverty, failure, etc. Does this kind of make sense here? Again, talking about we become what we think about, and cosmic habit force picks up on what we're thinking about, and it establishes that pattern within ourselves, and that helps with what comes to us. Cosmic habit force is the means by which every living thing perpetuates its species. Aims and purposes expressed orally under the great creative forces of the sex emotion are acted upon rapidly by cosmic habit force. Successful men have established success through thought patterns in their minds, which is propagated by cosmic habit force. An example, I know exactly what I want from life, and I'm on the path to attain it. So this is why it's so important for us, again, keep your mind focused on what you want, and keeping those specific patterns and those habits consistent with where we want to go. The adverse of this would be, I have no purpose and I'm drifting aimlessly through life. Cosmic habit force makes fixations permanent when we take possession of our own mind and keep it focused on exactly what we want. This is the power, cosmic habit force is the power that makes fixations permanent. In this sense, again, repeating your definite major purpose plan daily reinforces patterns and the habits that we're trying to create in our lives. And fixations, we talk about fixations, and generally when we hear that, it's usually said in a negative connotation, but when they can really be an asset when we direct them through controlled attention on our end goals. They can actually be an asset. So if we are giving something a lot of attention, we are giving a lot of bandwidth, so to speak, in our head, then if it's directed in the right way, then it can be an asset to us. And another part to remember here is that your mental attitude is something that you control outright. This isn't to say that, emotions don't have an influence and that it's, that we don't feel a certain way. I mean, obviously we're human, right? We're going to feel certain things, and they're going to hit us in a certain way because that's part of who we are. But the fact of the matter is that we don't necessarily have to be a certain way if we don't want to. Of course, there are people who have depression and they're bipolar and, those sorts of things, that is true. But generally speaking, we can control the way that we feel about things, and we can control the attitude that we bring to the situation. We could approach a situation and become very irritated about it, or we could take a different approach with it. So a couple of examples that Hill gave, specifically about cosmic habit force. He says that one of the biggest changes for him came when he was able to shake off his habits of poverty consciousness. He had a lot of self-doubt stemming from where he came from when he went to go and see famous people for interviews. And over time, he was able to shake off these limiting beliefs and create new habits which would help ensure his success. The new thought that he came up with was, well, why wouldn't so-and-so want to see me when I'm as big in my field as he is in his? He kind of had this whole new approach that he would come to the situation with. And there's something really powerful about that. We may not be able to change certain things, but we can change who we are, and we can change the attitude that we bring to a certain situation. And that's exactly what Hill did. And through doing that, obviously cosmic habit force was able to come in, and other things were able to change as well. A couple of other examples, controlling habits during mealtime. I actually had this today. Hill argues that the mental attitude that we have while eating affects how that food will make us feel. I think that it's possible that we can end up kind of creating I think what Tony Robbins would call a neuroassociation with a specific thing or a specific time. For example, if it's a family and they always have fights during dinner, then you may not want to go and eat dinner with everyone else in the family, because you become to associate sitting down and having that meal together with, well, something is going to happen. There's going to be some kind of argument, and there's going to be some words that are thrown around, and then we don't want to do that anymore. And I think that, if we eat food in a stressful place, then there's something to be said for that. There's something, we can create associations with that aren't necessarily healthy. On a personal level, sometimes I link food as a stress release. It becomes a way to release something. If you talk with people who are overweight and you see if they're stressful or if they have a stressful life, sometimes you'll get that back, and you realize that you've associated food with something that it shouldn't be. And that creates a habit, which begets a habit, which results in becoming a little bigger than you want to. And that's something I've had to, kind of to rewire and stop that habit and put something else in its place. Food becomes a coping mechanism for dealing with things or reacting to a situation as opposed to really nourishment, which is what it's supposed to do. Some other examples here, we're talking about cosmic habit force, the mental attitude that we have with work, that becomes a vital aspect in our lives, and we have to keep our mind positive there. Going back to some of our examples, truth be told, no one ever became financially successful without first creating a wealth mindset. The truth is that poverty-stricken people tend to attract the physical equivalent to themselves. Mental attitudes can also become fixed, and the mental attitude that we put out will reflect itself back in what we receive. If we put out, if you want to call it vibes, if we put out bad vibes out there, negative vibes out there, then there's a good chance that we're going to reflect some of that back on us. Like attracts like, as they say. So that was a difficult part to go through, talking about cosmic habit force. But at the end of the day, it ties back to a lot of the principles which Napoleon Hill talks about. Creating a plan, what our mental attitude is going to be, and how we approach a lot of things in life. And the truth is that just as everything else in the world has a rhythm, we have to create a rhythm within ourselves. We have to create a set of guiding principles, so to speak, within ourselves, which is going to help determine where we're going to go in life. And I think that extrapolating upon this a little bit more, the takeaway that I have with Cosmic Habit Force is that remember that you become what you think about. How we approach things and the habits that we bring into the situation will help determine where we go. And once we pick up once we kind of develop a foundation there and we kind of develop a rhythm with things, then it becomes easier for that rhythm to just keep going. People who are generally successful, they tend to stay in that track. People who have developed themselves in a certain way, they'll usually stay that way. And there's something to that because they've created a rhythm, so to speak, consciously or not. Cosmic Habit Force has helped those people maintain that success and create something very, very special in this world. This is a very difficult concept to talk about, but I think if I were to boil it down to a few things, here's what I would say. Just as everything in the world has a rhythm, and just as every piece of matter has a rhythm, we operate on one too. And it can be a negative rhythm or it can be a positive rhythm. But the truth is that we're going to fall into one or the other. And just as with Newton's first law, when an action comes in and hits an object, whether it's at rest or whether it's in motion, and puts it on a new trajectory, we can do the same thing for us. And our thoughts are really the action step there. If we use thought, we can create good habits that we can ingrain in ourselves, which will put us on the path to success. If we fail to do so and we allow the negative side to take over, that can develop its own habits, which can put us on a trajectory that we don't want, and which at the end of the day is not going to serve us. Just as everything else in this world has a rhythm and has a pattern that it operates off of, we do too. And if we fail to consciously take action and fail to consciously make the right choices and choose the right habits, then that's a big problem. So take the action here, create the action steps for yourself, create the habits that you want to have in life, and that's going to put you on a much better place. I wanted to share a little bit about my definite major purpose plan that I created. I think that I started this whole video series about 6 months ago, and I did this because I wanted to finish what I had started on this entire. I wanted to finish the Napoleon Hill course, which I'd started back in 2021, and it's been a long time coming. And I would say, reflecting back on it, it has been a really positive experience. I was able to through the entire course, really develop an understanding of a lot of these principles and a lot of different examples out there. And I think that, doing this video series and creating a plan, it helped me develop an understanding of Hill's definite major purpose strategy and really explain these concepts out. And I really hope that these videos are really helping a lot of other people out there as well. What I would say here is that in creating my definite major purpose plan, I put down some objectives and some deadlines to help keep me more accountable. I think that doing it publicly put a little bit of pressure on making sure that some of the objectives I put down were followed. And I do think that, reflecting back on it, I think that some of the objectives that I put down, they were a little bit more limited looking back than I think I would like. I think that I could have put things in there that were a little bit more challenging. I did feel that it was important just to start with it and just to get back on with it. They are what they are, but I think in the next step of definite major purpose plan, of a definite major purpose plan that I would put forward, I'd probably make it more challenging and more demanding, because the truth is that life is short and we have to put some challenging things in there. It's important for us to grow. If we're just doing things which are comfortable and we put down before, that's not good enough. We've got a lot of things to do. It's essential for us to put down things that are going to push us to the next level. So I hope to do that in the next plan. Also put some stronger career goals in there as well. I also want to put a shout out to my friend Adam Hayes for discussing and providing some insight on some of these things. I really do appreciate that. So thank you, my friend, for helping talk some of these things out. So I'm going to talk about a couple negative things that I noticed with my definite major purpose plan, and then I'll talk about some positive things. And I also put some recommended improvements in there for myself. One negative aspect was that the entire process here, it took way longer than was necessary. I originally started this series back in September 2023, and I actually, I started the whole Napoleon Hill course back in summer of 2021. And this was the final component of that entire process. So this whole thing's taken 3.5 years, which is way longer than it ever needed to be. And I think it shows a bit of a theme of procrastination within myself. A lot of this stuff could and should have been done a lot sooner. But I kept putting it off, and it seemed like it was kind of out of sight, out of mind. And eventually I said, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to finish this thing, which I want to do, we got to get it done. We got to do it right. And let's do a video series about this, because it's going to be the easiest way to be able to teach some of these principles out there. So thank you for sticking through, and I hope that you've enjoyed it so far. Improvements for myself, I would say staying harder on deadlines and asking mastermind members to hold me accountable to those. Also recognizing that, the truth is that time is not infinite. We don't have time to dilly-dally along on this stuff, and we can't just get caught up in life. It's too easy to do that. Another thing that I noticed was that my repetition of the definite major purpose plan was not very consistent. So I failed to recite it twice daily as instructed. I would usually do it at least once a week, sometimes less. What did help was putting it in my journal, because that helped make it much more accessible, and then I could pull it out if I had a free moment with something. And if I were to put any improvements in here, I would say record and listen to myself saying the definite major purpose plan out daily. Probably place it on my computer desktop as well. Make it a picture so I can see it right there. Another slight failure was that I really did not lose the weight that I'd put on here. And I've put this on a couple, I did this on another definite major purpose plan before, and I didn't really lose a significant amount of weight. I did cheat on the diet with all the things which were laid out specifically. Stress eating, at one point it came back. I would say that at this point that this could be indicative of a longer term challenge. And there's going to need to be a couple of improvements in here. One of which is going to be staying strict with a weighing schedule and writing that into a prominent place. That's something which, I would do every now and then. If you don't know the numbers, then you're always right. Another thing I would put down is providing healthier eating alternatives. It's so easy if there's a snack or there's some chips or something, just to be able to grab that when you don't have anything else. And it's like, well, I'll make an exception in this case. Well, you keep saying that, you keep making more exceptions for yourself, and eventually it doesn't really work for you. Another concept that I would probably put in here, and this is another Tony Robbins idea, changing what you link pain and pleasure to, specifically when it comes to food. So instead of being more focused on finishing everything that's on your plate to make it so that it's more pleasurable to have a little bit left over, and to associate pleasure with pushing the plate away as opposed to eating a lot. Another thing would be to put a price on it. I know that Miss Katie, one of the things that she did was she did a thing called Healthy Wager, which is where you actually put real money at stake. And if you don't get it, then you don't get it back. And if you do reach your weight goal, then I think that you get it back and then you get some interest on top of it. But putting an actual price on it, that may be something going forward that is going to be necessary. Also, setting realistic objectives for working out would make sense, because I know that when I started doing the Definite Major Purpose Plan, one of the things that I put in there was exercising for about, what was it? I think it was exercising every single day. And the truth be told was that I had times where I did not want to go, and I would say, forget about it. I'm not doing it today. And, then you become upset because you're not reaching the objective that you put down. So I think what might make sense is putting it down for maybe like every other day. Probably the biggest thing in this section, and this is something which, listening to Tony Robbins, I noticed in there, was really putting the why factor behind these things. And asking the question, why is it that I want this? If I were to make one recommendation or tweak to the Napoleon Hill principles, I would say probably putting a why factor behind some of the objectives that you're putting down would be a good step. Because if you've got something which you need to do and you don't want to do, and it may, just because you put it down on paper, it can make it difficult to stay through with that. Putting down, why is it that I want this? What's going to happen in 1 to 5 years if this is not addressed? What will happen in 1 to 5 years if this is addressed? And are there action steps that can be taken now? Because if this stuff continues, and if a gain continues, what are the taxes that are going to be on my body? What are the taxes that are going to be on my health in the future? Seeing in that long-term perspective helps things really come into focus. Another thing I would say is that the financial oversight part, which I mentioned about in my Definite Major Purpose Plan, that was not implemented fully. I did follow through with things like combining retirement accounts and setting up a emergency fund. The real oversight as far as expenses going out, that never really happened. Another an improvement that I would put here specifically, just to start, is checking the bank account daily and always knowing what the numbers are. Again, like I mentioned before, if you don't know the numbers, you're always right. So keeping an eagle eye on that, I would say, would be one of the best things I could do to make sure that part maintains consistency. That whole section is going to need to, take probably putting back in there, setting up the why factor. Why do I want this? What's going to happen if it's not addressed, if it is addressed, and what are the actions that we can take now? And really breaking those things down, because these are, recognizing that you put something down a couple times and it's still not getting taken care of, it really shows you a lot about what yourself and where your weaknesses are. So even by not accomplishing these things, I'm able to learn, like, okay, what are the sticking points? Where are the areas that, things need to be changed? And that part can be a positive thing to getting it done. I did also notice some successes which came out of doing the Definite Major Purpose Plan. A couple big ones here. I started making a lot of better choices for myself. I started taking a lot more action that was consistent with success-mindedness. And at one point, I noticed that I started standing up for myself at work when I had issues. And that's been a personal sticking point for me for some time. But having at least the courage and the impetus to be able to take the right steps to correct something, if there's an inconsistency with a job, or there's a specific problem, being able to recognize that and being able to take that to the right person and being able to rectify that, that's a big deal. That is a big deal. And I've actually been very proud of being able to take care of that. And I plan to continue making sure that that happens. The outlook that I have today, I don't think I would let those sorts of things get by me anymore. Another success, bit of a minor one, but I consider it to be one, was that I didn't really gain any weight. I stayed at about 240 pounds, and that helped pump the brakes on what had been a bit of an incline. I didn't go up any pant sizes. I didn't go up any shirt sizes. Putting this process in, it did help me stop drinking for quite a bit. And it did help me stop eating a lot of, really bad and carb-loaded foods. I don't see myself buying a lot of pastries or things at the bakery and such. So that's been a good thing. And another thing was I started taking, when I would go and work out, I took a lot of protein shakes and I would put food in and almond milk. And that was a good thing. I actually really, really liked that. That was a fun thing to be able to do and to be able to look forward to. And going into that, I think that exercising and starting a routine with that, it actually, being able to start that habit and keep that habit going was a really important thing personally, because it did improve my physical well-being. It's helped me stay a lot more focused. I feel ready to start the day when I do it, and I was able to create a rhythm. That would usually be a couple times a week or a few times a week, at least once a week. If it was a really busy time and I was just too tired, I would do it at least once a week. I found that evenings were probably the easiest time for me just to stay consistent. It was usually too hard to be able to go in the morning, but I could definitely do it after work, after everything had shut down and finished, and then I was just in there by myself. But it was a great way to really start the new year. And, I recognized going through my definite major purpose plan that I wasn't really doing this. And, to actually pick that habit up and stay with it, I've actually been really proud of that. And, I just did it yesterday. Probably should go today after I do this. But I've already been seeing some results as far as in the arms and legs and my mental clarity. So that's been a huge improvement. I've never really developed that habit of doing that so consistently. There were a lot of other personal objectives which did get accomplished. I got a new job. That was something I put in there. At one point, I adjusted my definite major purpose plan and put that part in there. So I did get that. And I'm going to need to go back and probably put that part in again because the job I have is seasonal. So we'll be back to the grind on that, but I know how to approach that and have the right mental attitude for it. I also renewed my my membership. So I am a member of the Benevolent Protective Order of the Elks, and I'd let my membership lapse. And what I realized was that, especially back in September, there's been a trend, especially in the United States, of a lot of men to kind of drop off socially from a lot of things. And I realized that I had done that too. And when I got laid off in September, what I realized was that a lot of the friends that I had, or at least the people I thought were my friends, they were all at work. And especially coming out to a new part of the country where where I don't really have a base in the same way, I was lacking a lot of that, I don't know if you'd say male companionship, but being able to know other men, being able to know other people in the same way. And, there's a real loneliness to that. And recognizing I was fitting into that larger macro trend, which you see going across the country. So that made me want to get back into something like that, go back to church, and be able to get to know some new people. In fact, one of my new friends that I was able to make in the last year, he came by and was helping me with something yesterday. Other couple successes. I created a savings account which needs to be replenished again, but that helped with if things were to come up. I've got taxes filed. Uploaded some new videos online for another channel, including this one, and I became more familiar with video editing software and how to make things. And actually a big one personally was I got a lot of health checkups done. I was totally due for getting a regular checkup, going to the dentist, getting dental work done. especially back on my old plan. And I found out some things which I do need to do. In fact, just reviewing over these things, I did notice there was one other part here, but there were some personal things which really needed to get done, and I'm glad I did do them, and it did help me hold accountable. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me today talk about Cosmic Habit Force and talk about my definite major purpose plan. I do hope that there were some things in here which definitely helped you with coming through. I would say, in conclusion, that when it comes to making a definite major purpose plan, have some people who can hold you accountable. Don't be afraid to set challenging goals. Obviously, you don't want to put things on there which are almost impossible, that are going to stress you out like crazy. But don't be afraid to put things on there which will push you a bit more and will get you to do things which you don't necessarily want to do, but you need to do. And see if you can, again, the one thing I would put on there is see if you can find why those things are. Maybe not necessarily on the purpose plan, but maybe somewhere, put down, why is it that I need to take care of this? What's going to happen to me if I do it? What's going to happen to me if I don't do it? And what are some of those action steps going to be? That way you can get a little bit of leverage over yourself and kind of put down, what is it that's going to drive me to want to get these things done? And that kind of push and pull could help give you a little bit more success when it comes to doing these things. Because, the truth is, we get caught up with things and life gets in the way, but we can't let that happen. We can't let life determine all of that stuff. We have to be the ones to determine our future, and we have to be the ones to set, forward that habit, good habits and habits that are going to put us on the track to where we want to go. Because as we talked about before, Cosmic Habit Force is going to come back, and it can help us or it can definitely hurt us. So we need to take advantage of this tool and bring it to its full potential. Again, thank you very much for listening to me talk about all these things. Again, if you had some thoughts or some comments or some things that you want to share, please share those below, and please like and subscribe. And let me know if you want to see more videos about this stuff. This is the last one I was planning to do, but if you are getting some good info out of these, I'm happy to do some more. Just like I said, let me know down in the comments section. And thank you everyone so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. This has been a big project, and it's been a big deal to get this done. So thank you again. God bless, and I'll see you on the other side.